Well, hi everyone. I was wearing this hat because it was fun and because I just liked the reminder of Santa's big beard that we talked about. Remember how he grew big and rosy and all that? But I'm not going to wear it while I read because, of course, that's hard to do. So, chapter 14. We've come a long way, haven't we? The last stocking. 10 more years passed, and every Christmas morning the children found their stockings filled with toys and candy and nuts. Poor families found baskets filled with good things to eat: wildfowl, vegetables, flour, and meal. Sometimes even bundles of clothing for every member of the family were placed on the doorsteps. For Nicholas was now a prosperous old man and shared all he had with the less fortunate townfolk. But as the years went on and his good deeds increased, he was growing more and more feeble. The villagers who loved and venerated him grew sad when their children prattled happily on Christmas morning over their toys, and the fearful thought in every parent's heart was, maybe next Christmas he won't be with us. One year, a group of men and women called on Nicholas at his cottage with a suggestion. "We thought, Nicholas," said one man a little hesitantly, "we thought that since it's so cold filling stockings outside the door, and sometimes there are 5 or 6 to each family, why couldn't the children leave their stockings inside by the fireplace? Then you could come in and get warm and take your time about it," added one kindly woman. Nicholas raised his white head from the work he was always doing and smiled all over his rosy face. He placed one gnarled hand, grown old in the service of others, on the man's shoulder. "The idea of you coming here to tell me how to do my work," he joked. "Why, I remember filling an embroidered bag for you when you were tinier than your children are now. And then they started putting stockings out instead of bags, and now you're telling me to pull the stockings in. Well, times change, I suppose, and I must keep up with the times, so indoors I will go, and I thank you all for the warm fires." So after that year, Nicholas would creep into houses on Christmas Eve and would settle his bulky old form comfortably before the fire and fill the stockings leisurely. The firelight would leap up merrily as if to help him at his work, and the peaceful old face with the halo of white hair and beard would beam warmly at the little toys he stuffed into the stockings, and the wrinkled hands would caress lovingly the little boats and dolls that a hand's child would fondle the next morning. One Christmas Eve, old Nicholas found it more and more difficult to leave each fireplace for the next house. The warm blaze made him drowsy, and his old bones protested as he heaved himself up wearily to be on with his work. It was slow progress he made from house to house, but he finally reached the last stop, his back tired from the bulky sack, his head drooping with sleepiness and his heart heavy, as he realized how old he must be when the task he had done for so many years was beginning to wear him out. The last house was reached, and Nicholas dropped in by the fire with a deep sigh of relief. It was a long time before he recovered sufficiently to start filling the stockings. Even then, he did it slowly, reaching painfully down into his sack, and each time straightening himself with growing difficulty. He filled 4 of the 5 stockings that were hanging over the fire, and then with the 5th one, still empty in his hands, the old head drooped drowsily, and Nicholas went fast asleep. He awoke with a start an hour later when a man anxiously shook him by the shoulder. "Are you all right, Nicholas?" asked a worried voice. "I got up to see if the fire had gone out and found you still here, and look, it's almost dawn." Nicholas shook himself up and then stood up wearily. Yes, lad, it's Christmas morning and I haven't finished my work," he said sorrowfully. "I'll do the last one for you, Nicholas," answered the man kindly. "You just leave the toys and things here and go home to bed. I'll finish it. Go along now before the children get up and see you." Nicholas, thinking of his warm, comfortable bed, handed the stocking to the man and went out into the gray dawn. 5 minutes later, the little night-gowned boy stood in the doorway of the living room. "Why, Father," he exclaimed in a disappointed voice, "I thought it was Nicholas who gave us the toys, and here you are filling my stocking." The child looked ready to cry, but his father, caught with a half-filled stocking, hastened to reassure him. "Your Nicholas is getting old, my boy," he said, and sometimes he gets tired. So tired that we parents have to help him in his work. But don't you forget, it's always Nicholas who leaves you the toys. "That's all right then," said the little fellow. "It isn't half so much fun when you think your mother and father prepare the gifts." "I should say not," said the father sternly. "And you must never doubt Nicholas. Why, he might be so hurt at a little boy thinking he didn't fill the stockings that he might never come to his house again. Think how terrible that would be." "Yes," whispered his son in a frightened voice. "What would Christmas be without Nicholas?" Holly, no longer little Holly, was a lovely, slender young girl and led a happy life, her childish terrors long forgotten. She hummed a gay little carol that Christmas morning as she walked along the roads towards Nicholas's cottage, her arms filled with bright red berries that bore her own name. She still continued the practice of bringing flowers all year round to her old friend, and every Christmas she would go into the Black Forest to gather holly with which to decorate his cottage on Christmas morning. It was almost noon, and as she approached the house, she noticed how silent and empty it looked without Nicholas's head at the window, bent over his work, and with no smoke coming from the chimney. "Poor thing," thought the girl affectionately. "He's probably all tired out from his trip last night. I won't waken him. I'll just go in and make his fire and put the holly around." She stole silently into the cold little cottage and soon had a warm blaze crackling on the hearth. She cast an anxious glance now and then towards the closed door that led to Nicholas's bedroom. She was so afraid of disturbing his slumber, but she heard no sound and busied herself decking the halls and windows with gay branches. Then, with one spray still in her hand, she looked around uncertainly, and not finding another bare spot in the living room, she decided to bring it to place beside Nicholas, so the branch of holly would be the first thing he'd see when he opened his eyes. She opened the door quietly and stole over to the bed. "Why, the darling was so tired he fell asleep with his clothes on," she murmured tenderly. For the fat, round figure lay there, still dressed in the bright red suit with white fur and the shiny black leggings and close-fitting stocking cap. "Here's your holly," whispered the girl, bending over Nicholas. Then, with a startled expression, she dropped the blood-red blossoms all over the still figure and sprang back, frightened. "Nicholas! Nicholas!" she screamed. "Nicholas! Oh, he's dead! He's dead!" She ran bareheaded out into the snow, tumbling blindly down the road into the village, and with tears streaming down her face, called loudly for the townfolk. They gathered in little groups to listen to her story. The women murmured in broken tones between sobs, "He's dead! He's dead," and clasped their wondering little children closer as if to comfort them for the loss of their dearest friend. The men looked down at the ground and up at the sky and every place but each other's eyes, for no man wanted to see the tears that stood there. "Yes, he's dead," they all sighed deeply. "Who's dead, Mother? Is it Nicholas?" asked the children. "Won't he come to us anymore on Christmas Eve?" The parents had to turn away from the wide, childish eyes because they didn't want to say to them that awful sentence, "Yes, Nicholas is dead." The bells tolled, and the village was in darkness Christmas night. Vixen and his brothers whimpered in their stalls, and the holly glowed red over a still loving heart in a red suit. We've got one more chapter, and tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and I want to read that to you. And for many of you, it'll be Christmas Day. So I'd love for you to come back and join us to see the finishing chapter, hear the finishing chapter of the adventures of Nicholas. And in the meanwhile, have a Merry Christmas.